What vehicle do you find to be most annoying in Hogs of War? In this case, I have to say the Pillbox. It's very simple in its design. Yeah, okay, it's got that heavy machine gun and flamethrower combo, and it does provide the player with decent short to mid-range capabilities, but quite frankly, it's loud, it's slow, and it's a pain to play against, especially if you're doing a speed run. Despite it being slightly annoying though, it is quite iconic, and I'd go as far as saying it's actually more iconic than the artillery, simply because it is the most common vehicle in the single player campaign, and it just kind of sits as a staple within the enemy's arsenal because the majority of the time it's the enemy that is using it more than the player. Of course, the player does have ways of getting enemy pigs out of pillboxes simply by standing on them, but we'll get to that later. So it's iconic, yes. It's annoying, hell yes. Is there anything else we can say about it? Well, we know from today's game that the pillbox usually sits with a base health of 100, with the machine gun that it has doing 40 damage and the flamethrower doing the standard 30. You do have the one instance of the health being increased to 200 on the final mission, but I think we'll put that down as being an exception, seeing as on the final mission, overall, it requires more health. So has this vehicle really changed since its early days, and has its design always been fairly linear? Well, diving back in time, and as many of you have already seen, the early version of the pillbox was designed to hold multiple pigs that could fire their weapons from the slots inside the pillbox. It is worth noting that at this point in design, the player was able to see the world in first person, so I guess this would have been the primary view that the player was able to use when sat inside the pillbox. Pretty cool work considering this was 20 years ago. Not that a first-person view was anything new, as the likes of Half-Life and Quake were at the top of their game during this time. From our perspective as fans though, and indeed players, it is awesome to see. Damage numbers are unknown at this stage in development, but we do know that from the game's design document that if a player were to use a vehicle and it were to get destroyed, they would take, and I quote, lots and lots of damage. Nothing new from what we already know then, but this is still useful information when considering the types of damage numbers we could have seen. Obviously the pillbox's overall design is different from today's game, as its hexagonal shape is a lot sharper when compared to the much smoother, beveled edges of the pillbox we see today. It is considerably smaller, but as we know, the overall scale of a lot of the assets at this stage was kind of all over the place. Moving forwards then, and the pillbox is fully operational, with the standard machine gun and flamethrowers on show. The most interesting thing to note here though, is that the machine gun actually did 30 damage, not 40, while the flamethrower did 20 damage, not 30. As I've shown and indeed mentioned in most of my recent videos, the machine gun's bullet spread was not as wide compared to today, which means that it was more likely for a shot to connect with the target. That's for short to mid-range though. Long range targets are still difficult to hit, even with a tighter bullet spread. Still, doesn't really bother me too much, seeing as we barely get to use the pillbox in single player anyway. So returning to the present, and we have come full circle. I feel like the pillbox works well as a training tool, seeing as its overall mechanics are simple. Jump in, turn around, and shoot. The player is already restricted when it comes to positioning and movement with this vehicle, so it's just one less thing you really have to worry about. And when you think about it, the positions the pillboxes are placed in the single player campaign are already predetermined, so the player automatically has no choice but to sacrifice this idea of getting a better angle on the enemy for the sake of some armor and, you know, the good old shooty, because let's face it, the machine gun is very simple to use, but I guess that would be balanced by the fact that certain shots don't always hit their mark, which I suppose can be kind of annoying for new players who don't fully understand all game mechanics, because when the crosshair is completely on and indeed covering the pig you are targeting, it should hit the pig, right? Well, yes, but at the same time it actually shows us the complexity of this game. It shows us that Hogs of War actually has more depth to it than just aim and shoot. There's all kinds of physics that are going on when a bullet is fired, so if a shot from a machine gun, or any gun for that matter, hits the same thing that you're aiming at every single time, it can get very boring very quickly. It's like what I've talked about before in regards to certain weapons and their damage numbers. If the player knows all there is to know and can predict everything, like the same outcome over and over again with 100% correctness, it doesn't really make it much of a strategy game. So the next time you miss a shot with the pillbox's machine gun, don't get mad. Instead, think about the amount of work and thought and planning that went into making these more complex things possible. Also, fuck the flamethrower, because I've never used that damn thing anyway. Overall though guys, that's pretty much going to wrap everything up. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think about the Pillbox and its development in the comments below. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Everything and anything, let me know, and let's get a discussion going as we always do. I think I've covered pretty much all of the vehicles in this game besides the tank, but that one is quite self-explanatory. I will get to it eventually. But a lot of stuff planned, a lot of stuff going on, so I hope you can stick around, check out the other videos if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys later for the next one.
Oh, liquid springs to my eye. Goodbye.